Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. As Cheng just explained, I've been writing about AI for a couple of years now for MIT Technology Review, and it's very clear that it's already an international phenomenon. The founding fathers of AI come from all over the world, and although there's a lot of activity in the US, and as we just heard, Canada, there's an amazing amount from many different countries. And as you've heard from the last couple of days, there's a really exciting amount of stuff coming out of China. And at the same time, I think it's very important to look at the issue of globalization and how this is going to pan out. As Chinese companies look abroad and as other companies in the US and Europe look to the Chinese market, it's going to become very interesting in the next few years. So we have a really fantastic panel for you to talk about this, and I'd like to introduce them individually. First of all, we have Wesley Mukai, who is the CTO of GE Transportation Digital Solutions. All right, next we have a person you've heard from, Jean-Sébastien Cornier, who is the co-founder of Element AI and a co-founder and partner of Real Ventures. Thirdly, we have Adam Kell, who is also from Comet Labs. Please welcome Adam. Sorry, Adam is a partner, I should say, at Comet Labs. And last but by no means least, we have Suji Yan, who is CTO of Sujitech, a Japanese AI company. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So I just want to start off by talking about the question of how you take an AI company international, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are. And Wesley, I know this is something you have some visibility on, being working for a big international company. So tell us a bit about the challenges and the opportunities of going international and maybe going into China.
Sure. Yes, in GE Transportation, obviously we've had quite a bit of focus in the train space. And so in transportation, we've had great success actually going abroad from more of the physical assets. So building trains, we do a lot of work in China, South Africa. It's been very common and very easy to do. But as we got to sort of the digital side of our business, so software, and even now with more data science, I find that it's actually a lot more challenging because of so much of the data and the domain, it resides in country, and the knowledge resides in country. So whether it's the analytics space, et cetera. And so being able to export that kind of knowledge and be able to apply technologies abroad in the software space has actually been quite a big challenge for us. And we're right in the middle of that challenge right now.
Jean-Sébastien, you want to talk?
Yeah, so for Element AI, as you may remember from when I described it, Element is about building an ecosystem. So we collaborate with the research labs and universities and enable their professors to work directly with large corporations. So as we expand internationally, we are building these clusters in the given markets. So we started working on the Japanese market. So it starts with recruiting a group of fellows, which are really faculty members in some of the largest research labs and universities who will work for us part-time. And then on that platform, we will add our own research team, our own applied research team, and our own engineering team. But that will all come from local people. And then we exchange the knowledge that we've built in the Montreal cluster with the one here.
So is that why everybody is building a lab everywhere? Like people are putting labs in China, Chinese companies are putting them in the US because they want to understand the market.
Yeah, you need to go where the talent is.
Right.
So there is, fortunately, here in China you have great universities, so there's a lot of great AI talent here. Japan has the same. Even Singapore has good AI talent as well. But the challenge has been in making that talent accessible and valuable for large corporations. It's very hard to get from the hardcore innovation and then turn that into software applications that can be used by large corporations. and you're better off getting density in a few organizations than you are in having every large company with 5 to 15 different people that will struggle to build world-class applications.
Right. Adam, you were nodding your head there. I can tell you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty early days for AI. I think most of the time, the home country where technology is developed is the first market that comes to mind, for the obvious reason that the founders are from that place. But I think it's still pretty early days to be able to tell how kind of that knowledge will be transferred. AI companies have a unique difficulty in that the data sets that they work with are generally very focused on environment. So, there's kind of a spectrum of companies that you could see being much more easy to go international. Those are things where you may be like apple picking, for example. Taking photos of apples looks the same in China as it does in the US, whereas something like a social network has a lot of other dynamics. One being language, but others being just user behavior and things like that. So I think it's still early days, but definitely the big golden goose that a lot of people are focusing on is that international strategy.
And so how are you looking, because I know you're looking at investing in Chinese companies. What are the sort of main considerations you're making there when you're considering these limitations?
I think really like what we've seen is that the use cases are hyper localized today. So first, we do really early stage investments. So international expansion is pretty far from the minds of most of the founders. We investors like to kind of dream about that stuff, but I think in reality it's something that's several years away. So it's really about executing on a local scale with the ability to be able to leverage that technology asset and data into other markets when the time's right.
Right. It depends on the market, right? So a market like China or Japan or Korea, you can't be an American company or a Canadian company and come here and hope to build a business here unless you're working with local people. Right. But you could be a Canadian company and develop a market base in the US or in some of the European countries.
Right. So, Suji, we were just mentioning Japan, and you have a unique perspective on that, being from China and having set up a company in Japan. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I would like to talk to you about the general AI startups in Japan, and Adam just talked about the Apple Pay. Actually, Apple Pay started to cooperate with the Japan Railway and its payment system, Suica. So I think actually Japan is on the cutting edge of entering a new generation, and some revolution is happening there. And there's also a large market, and it's one-tenth of population of China, and market is really huge. So, and there's some special and unique industry only exists in Japan, such as anime industry. Probably in US they have a game industry, but they don't have really an anime industry. So I think there's a lot of chance, and technology is important, but it's not only part, and you need to find the local partners, the local business, the local ecosystem to cooperate with them.
Well, so John Sebastian, I really enjoyed your talk, and I thought it's interesting looking at the case of Canada, because the government put a lot of money into fundamental research a while back, and that has paid incredible dividends, right, for the whole AI industry. So I wonder if you have thoughts on how Canada can hold on to its AI leadership when other nations are going to be looking and to follow suit, right? Everybody's going to be trying to invest more and more. It's going to be kind of a bit of a challenge.
And really, it's about speed. So if you just take the example of Element AI, we started the company in the fall, and we will be in Asia with a whole stack here this year, and we feel that's the only way. So we raise more money probably than we should have based on the stage of the company, but the AI game is getting played now, and you need to move really fast. Right. So we're actually serving more Asian companies now than we are serving Canadian companies, because the Asian market is more mature than any other markets in the world, in our view, in wanting to implement AI solutions.
So, to that kind of point, do you guys think that there's going to be an increasing talent pull over to Asia? Because the US or North America has had this real center of gravity, but it seems like people are being pulled to Chinese companies, and maybe there's and there are a lot of people come to MIT from China to recruit. I'm wondering if you guys get a sense that that's going to be a trend.
Yeah, actually, I had it. It was interesting yesterday's talk from Jürgen at the beginning of the day. You know, he sort of talked about, the idea about PhDs and trees of PhDs and who you study with. And in this field where you really, have to spend quite a bit of time to really master it, sometimes I worry that, is it easy to, if everyone's coming to the U.S. or Canada, let's say, to study under certain professors and to get their PhD, they spend quite a bit of time. And in their sort of prime, they're formulating a lot of their opinions based in, let's say, the U.S. And is that, is there too much time where it's maturing in U.S. and it's tough to go back later? And that whole tree continues to propagate within a certain country. How do you break through that? Seems to be a problem.
Adam, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I can try. I think Trump is helping everyone with that.
I was going to bring up Trump later.
I don't think people feel welcome in the U.S. anymore, especially smart people that studied. So I think we will see a dramatic drop in the U.S. being the center of the universe for innovation. And that will drive more of the people that have been successful in it to either come back to their home countries or to move to different ones. So I think that will be a big accelerator. I mean, we're seeing it already in Canada. I think it's easier for us because we're just across the border. But as the immigration laws get even more restricted than they are now, I think you'll see more of it. And in the end, I mean, the main reason why the U.S. attracted so many people, well, first of it was cool, but then amazing opportunities to work. So you have Facebook, you have Google, Amazon, have huge data sets. So obviously, as a researcher or as an engineer, you want to go and work there. But as you now have amazing AI companies all over the world, there are great work opportunities here or in Japan or whatnot.
Yeah, I've been talking to researchers who've come back to China, and a lot of them cite the fact that there's a lot of data, there's less restrictions on what you can do sometimes with the data, and that just, I think if you're a huge AI nerd, that can be a big carrot. So Adam, what do you think about this?
I don't know. I don't necessarily view this as much of like a U.S. versus China thing. I think it's the founders and the environments are going to grow up in the place that the markets and a lot of other factors, the funding environment, access to data, a lot of these things exist. And I think that different countries are going to kind of either encourage or discourage that in different ways. I think that maybe kind of like I think that probably I'm obviously not talking about academic research, which is generally it's obviously important, but it's also very much shared and publication and peer review and things like that. But I think one of the places where the most important technologists that know how to use these tools are going to come from are the existing technology companies themselves. So, Google or any other technology company that hires most of the AI experts, there's going to be Google will still be around, but there will be a small diaspora of these technologists that go out and start doing other interesting things. And the same thing is definitely going to be true of Chinese companies. And I think that those are going to be more the dominating factors rather than anything else.
Sushi, do you have any thoughts you want to add anything?
So you mean about data? Or? Yeah, so for data, actually in Japan, most Japanese countries, they're more conservative about their user data, but it's still, I think it's a large business opportunity that they're willing to pay more to not share the data with you, but they want to research with AI startups as well. A lot of the AI startups actually in Japan is funded by university. One of the major investors is called UTC, University of Tokyo Edge Capital. They fund a series of AI startups, and they share the database from university and even the government. Of course, you cannot open it, but you can just research with them together, and they were willing to cooperate with you together. And one more thing, speech about immigration policy. Actually, Japan just announced that they have have a new policy about green card. You can only spend 1 year to get a green card in Japan. So that's better than Trump, I think.
There are a lot of things that are better than Trump.
I I think a big problem also that is a global problem, but also a regional problem for AI, is that you have a few companies. So here in China, you have Baidu and Tencent and Alibaba, for example, that are aggregating most of the talent inside their platforms, and that creates a huge gap for the AI needs for all of the other companies in the ecosystem. So it's true in North America as well. It's true in Europe. And I mean, I'm not sure what the solution is yet, but it's something that we need to work on, because then we'll get stuck with only a few companies that have built really strong AI that all the other companies are forced to work with.
Right. That's a very good point. So you brought up. I don't want to make this just about Trump, but one of the phenomenons that led to his election was the question of jobs and jobs disappearing in the US. And there's a sort of growing meme about AI and automation taking away jobs. So I wonder if you guys have any sort of advice for companies outside the US who want to do AI work there, and how to address that. Is it a question of just how you package and present this, or what's kind of strategies? Because it's going to become an increasing issue, I think, right? I don't know if anybody wants to take that. That's kind of a tricky one.
Just a clarifier on the question. Do you mean how, for people who want to start technology companies, or for people who are trying to deal about the joblessness?
I think people who want to start a technology company in the US focused on AI, how do you deal with that? Because the jobs issue is a real hot button one, right?
And are you referring to what he just said about like not being able to hire the talent, or are you referring to just jobs being out?
I'm talking about public opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he's talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is that AI companies don't create jobs; they kill jobs.
That's the
right. That's the mindset, right. And I think it's true to a certain extent, but before all the jobs are killed, right? The jobs will go to AI companies, or because these companies are more likely, the ones that implement AI the fastest and the best, are more likely to be successful, and as a result, will hire some people or more people, but they will destroy a lot of jobs at the same time in the markets where their solutions get deployed, which is also their home market. I think we, as a society, or as societies everywhere in the world, we need to think about what happens when half of the jobs in the world go away. Because that will happen. It will happen, it may not be in 5 years, it could be in 10 years, it could be in 20 years. But when it does happen, we need to rethink the economic model. And I mean, that's something that if you're an AI company, you need to think about how you will be addressing that. But governments in general also need to be thinking about that, because that's not something that companies will solve.
Right.
Like, we need to sort of redefine as human beings how we define ourselves. Right now, it's a lot through what we do for a living, but it will have to change in the future.
Yeah, I was just thinking though, does it really affect some of the big, the transportation industry, the manufacturing industry, where you have quite a bit of jobs, the scale jobs? Is AI going to affect really,
well, so all the,
in those areas in, let's say, the U.S.?
Within 15 years, there will be no more truckers,
right.
Which is the biggest creator of jobs in the U.S. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they already have automated trucks.
Correct.
And they're on the streets or on the roads already. So what do you do with those truckers?
Yeah.
Although, Otto and others will claim that just means that the single truck driver can go further, right? So it's a kind of, I don't know whether it's just like how you spin it, or whether it's actually, there is a, I think it's an unanswered question. Sorry, Adam, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the job of the technologists to be able to make sure other people are informed and have the tools that they need to make these policy decisions. I don't believe that it sits within the purview of technologists to be able to say that this is the way that we should, treat income, or this is how we should tax robots. I think that sits squarely in, and this isn't like I'm trying to like pass off responsibility to somebody else. I think it's our job to, well, not my job. It's the technologists who are developing this. To be able to make sure that the policymakers and economists are educated enough to be able to make those decisions.
I mean, I'm not sure I agree, and I'll explain why. So with the internet revolution, we sort of, the tech companies, if you look at Google and Facebook, for example, I don't know as much about China, but Trump in a part was elected because he was able to use Google and Facebook as propaganda machines, because they were not regulated in any way, because the politicians did not understand the power of those platforms. In a way, even Facebook and Google themselves did not understand the power of their platforms. But that's probably because they weren't forced to think about that. So I think the AI companies, I mean, AI is going to have the same impact, if not more, of the internet. We need to take the responsibility of understanding what the social impact of our companies are.
Just one last response. I still think that sits on I don't blame policymakers for that. I blame technologists for not setting it as a high enough agenda to be able to communicate the types of things that are being done. I think, on the one hand, you have Google trying to convince there was a Peter Thiel quote where if a company tries to convince you that they're not a monopoly, then they're probably a monopoly. And if they try to convince you that they're a monopoly, they're probably not a monopoly. So I think that the same thing goes with this, is that you have the technology companies. It has to be a very high priority. I mean, I think it's unrealistic. Like, frankly, like most of us in this room don't fully understand the ramifications of what's being developed. So how would you expect a politician to? So I think I don't necessarily think that it's right to kind of point to those silly policymakers. I think that we need to. I 100% agree that we need more collaboration, but I think it's around educating them and giving them the tools that they need to make the decision.
Suji, yeah, what's the scene like in Japan?
Yeah, so one more thing to remember is, I mean, people not necessarily want to work. I mean, one thing in Japan that Yamato used to hire a lot of people to pick up mails and package by hand, and now they use the machine and the business solution provided by AI staff called Mujin. So these guys who don't have job now, they go to actually do something more meaningful. They have a better, I mean, the government provides them something to do, like they go to university for adults, and they even have insurance for that. So I think it's more a problem for society, not for the AI staffs. And China, probably the average of population is still very young, so we won't encounter that problem in 15 or 20 years, but this day will come that people are getting elder and elder, and they don't really want to get to work, and they want to find something more meaningful than repeat the daily life, repeat daily work.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Sorry, just thought of one other comment around job displacement. I think like kind of one silver lining that from the U.S. perspective of the manufacturing industry getting hollowed out is we have frankly very recent scars of an industry that got basically gutted, and so one would hope that we have long-term enough memory to be able to take lessons from that and say, what did that cause, and we can make speculations about kind of in the political environment what types of people got angry, but I think that we're right to hear those voices now. So that's something that I hope that we can keep in our mind and learn from.
I'm hopeful that that trend, that potential trend, may also create a lot of opportunities in terms of opportunities for retraining people, and I think maybe AI could play a role in that. I think we're seeing some education-related AI startups. I think they could do good things. So slightly more cheerful topic. Let's just talk about China's kind of AI scene. This is slightly selfish because I'm writing a feature about it, but I'd love to get all of your thoughts on what where it's strong, what it's focused on, just any thoughts on it. So, Wesley.
One of the things I see, if I think of consumer versus industrial, one of the things that's nice, I've sort of been here 3 or 4 times over the last 3 or 4 years, and definitely, in this space, so much of it is it's based in developing technologies and products for the home country, and it's not trying to think about exporting technologies. So in this case, I think while I see the trend towards a lot of more consumer-oriented machine learning or AI applications, I'm really looking forward to seeing maybe an acceleration towards some of the more industrial ones. In the whole IoT space, I think it's one that lends itself to data being very physical and local to a geography, and I think it's going to help accelerate. I think there's great opportunity in China to kind of leapfrog and take advantage of that, as opposed to just focusing on consumer markets and things like that.
I think another area where China is very well positioned is there's less regulation for local companies in how to use consumer data. So that way you can get a lot more innovation when you don't have to worry, especially in healthcare. I think the other area is it's very difficult for a foreign company to come in and do business here So that will give local companies, a couple of years to sort of figure things out before some of the large U.S. or Canadian or European companies can come in and play with the local data sets.
Well, just also really quick, I mean, just in terms of data centers, I mean, I don't know how many companies have tried to build, a data center or a cloud with it from an outside perspective. You just can't do
it's
it, right?
impossible.
So in this case, with big data, doing analytics, it's gonna tend to make it a great advantage.
Right.
I think more from kind of like a foundational level, there are a lot of companies that have been built in China that I would argue probably just couldn't really have been built anywhere else, specifically in the U.S. So I think, one of the ways I kind of look at it is that, the banking system in the U.S. for the past, a few decades has been good enough, whereas, kind of the lacking in terms of, from a customer standpoint, like the lacking in the banking industry was really one of the things that prompted such a high development of like mobile wallets in Asia, which is it's leaps and bounds ahead of I don't know how many times you guys have tried to use like Apple or Android Pay in anywhere, but it's like hard, and I think that those types of factors are not to be understated. Because those types of applications that are built on this newer technology, a lot more information is digitized. The e-commerce revolution in China being much larger than it is from a user perspective, how much time people spend online shopping, their basket size, their percentage of income spent on e-commerce. Those are all indicators of an economy that's basically just grown up in a different environment from a technology perspective.
Suji, what do you think?
So I think Chinese customers is actually more open-minded to new products, and companies are willing to try new business solutions. They're willing to give their permission to do something new, and things are really hard in Japan. But the other thing different is that China is actually they have a booming for like entertainment. So I'm doing more in entertainment, so AI plus entertainment. So Chinese customers are paying more and more in games and different stuff that you have AI plus in that area, such as Day2. They have Beauty Plus, such things like that. And these things I think is very unique and only exists in China. Should be exist in China for a long time. And Japan is probably similar, but more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And Adam, I love what you said about the WeChat. I think I'd love to have something like that in the US, but the fact that we have existing banking, insurance systems, payment systems means that it just it won't work, which is a real shame. I found in my reporting that the scene here, that the excitement, the public excitement for AI is enormous, and also the amount of money flowing into startups is crazy. And it's similar to the US, but maybe even more. And I wonder if you feel that there's a bubble growing, and if not AI winter, is there going to be some sort of fallout from that? I must be a concern.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you look at the internet, there was a bubble in '99, 2001, but it was just ahead of its time, right? I mean, the entire world is on the internet today, so there was a reason for the excitement. I think the difference with AI is AI gives you like everyone's connected already. We're all on the internet. The data sets are there. There's a clear ROI today with the existing technology. So I really don't see it as a bubble. I mean, I think that the entire world's going to morph and go on AI, right? Every application will be AI driven. Every product that we use, every service that we use, like our society is going to be run on it. So it will happen, and I think we're still very early.
The only thing I would say is just a little bit, I don't think it's going to be a financial bubble, but more of a bubble of the terms. I think back in terms of like even the IoT term, right? That was probably a real big, boom about 10, 15 years ago with the RFID, et cetera, right? And it didn't really affect, the financial markets as much, but it just from a term, it kind of bubbled, peaked, and then kind of went down. I think, we're in that little bit of a hype cycle around the terms AI, but I don't think it's going to have a big financial crisis associated with it.
I think just based on the fact that the 4 biggest companies in the world have branded themselves as AI-first companies, it's definitely here to stay. But with that said, when people get that excited about a technology, a bunch of companies get started that shouldn't have gotten started, and inefficient capital gets allocated in inefficient ways, and it goes away. And the market corrects itself. But from a technology standpoint, this stuff is pretty. I can say pretty confidently. If I'm wrong, you can point to this clip, but pretty confident that it's here to stay.
I think it's overheated, but it's not a bubble. Most AI startups, including large corporations, labs, they're trying to find something can generate revenue in the future, but they are not sure that when is the future coming, like 5 years or 10 years. But I think they're, losing in competition. There's a two fierce competition in China and US right now. I think 4 startups doing the same areas, and they affect each other. So it's better to find a new market, use the technology you have, and to try to find something else, and try to get into the ecosystem. You can get better. So it's not a bubble. Just need to find the right revenue model. So in Japan, the competition is less fierce. I don't know about other countries. Probably Canada or Russia is better place. And if you got technology and try to find the local partner, try to find the right business model, then you can. It's not bubble.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, we've run out of time, and I'm sorry to end it on a slightly negative note, but thank you guys so much for talking. That was really, really interesting, and I'm sure everybody found that fantastic. So please say thank you to the panelists here.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys.